Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the last days. My name is Laura-Lynn Tyler Thompson, and I'm so glad that you're here. I love to pick out a scripture verse from my dad's Bible. It's very interesting. He's got he had the cheater. I didn't really realize this till when I looked at his Bible after he passed away about a year ago, that, he's got all of the things to tell you how to get to which books of the Bible. And when I was growing up, you had to memorize the books of the Bible. So I always like to see what my dad thought was important to underline. And every single day, I start the show by reading a scripture from the Bible that he's underlined. Well, I just opened it up to Daniel 11. Um, hmm, Daniel, this is Daniel 7, actually. And verse 22 says, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High. And the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Oh, I want to know more about that. He has underlined pretty much this whole chapter. Wow. And the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. That's in verse 27 of 7. That was a good verse, Dad. I believe that we're actually heading towards that time where we will have dominion. But in the meantime, it sure looks like the devil gets to have all the fun in the playground right now, as he seems to be upping his game against people of righteous standing, and certainly anybody that has common sense has been assaulted and attacked in our world. It's a season and a time where we wonder what is going on. Wrong seems right, right seems wrong, and the line between good and evil is dividing. I think it's getting clearer. For a while it was almost kind of gray, wasn't it? We don't know who's this or that. I mean, if I go back a few years ago, I mean, there was a lot of bad stuff going on, but did it really affect all of our lives? We just went on. We just thought we had the cat's meow of a life here in Canada and in North America. I'm a dual citizen. I love the United States of America. And what have we seen? We've seen them go through an absolutely epic time of deceit, and a whole bunch of things have gone wrong. They've had, election issues. They've had the COVID and the vaccine, people losing their jobs, all of that. We've all had to deal with it. Now, I want to tie in something very amazing. First of all, let's look at Laura Ingraham. She did a interview with this doctor. Many of you have heard of him. He's all over Twitter. And this doctor, he got his vaccines, and he had nothing against it. He was promoting them. He was telling people to get their vaccines, and then something changed. Watch a little bit of this. It's
Now,
fascinating.
you started looking into this after your father, who's a healthy man in his 70s, received his vaccine. Tell us what happened.
Good evening, Laura. Thank you for having me. I originally, interestingly, was one of the first to have 2 doses of the vaccine, and even went on Good Morning Britain to help tackle vaccine hesitancy, because although I've been very suspicious, as many people have been, about the pharmaceutical industry-sponsored research for many years and the reliability of it, I never conceived of the possibility, Laura, that a vaccine could do harm, and certainly not harm to the heart. And then in July of last year, my father, who was very fit and active and well, I'd actually carried out some routine heart checks on him a few years earlier. Everything was good. He suffered an unexplained sudden cardiac arrest at home. And his post-mortem findings didn't at the time make any sense to me. He had very severe narrowings of the coronary arteries, what we call critical stenoses. And then several months later, lots of different data started to emerge, which essentially, to summarize, suggested that the mRNA vaccines, Pfizer, Moderna, for example, likely accelerates coronary artery disease. So I then decided to do my own critical appraisal of the data and spent several months looking at it myself, speaking to eminent scientists in various universities, Oxford, Stanford, Harvard, experts in immunology, Two Pfizer whistleblowers spoke to me as well, and I spoke to investigative journalists. And then I decided I was going to publish my findings in a medical journal, which went through peer review. And essentially, the conclusions are this, Laura, that unfortunately, this particular vaccine has harms that are unprecedented. The efficacy is actually very, very poor. And I can break that down for you in a second. But what the conclusions are very clear, overwhelming, unequivocal evidence that these vaccines need to be suspended, paused, pending an inquiry.
Okay, well, I think that's interesting. I think that's good science, and that, a guy who really supported it is having a look at it and saying, listen, what should we do? And I've never been anti-vaccine. My children were all vaccinated, but it's because of the evidence that I think, and the science, the data that's coming out, that we all kind of, ask questions. That's all we're doing. We're asking questions. And so don't hate me, platforms that are listening right now. I'm concerned about something else going on, and that is the hatred towards the unvaccinated. Did you see this Matt Good comment that has been made? So Matt Good apparently got up at one of his concerts, two of them actually, here in British Columbia, and he said, Good tells BC crowd freedom protesters should be sent to Congo and shot by teens with AKs. AK-47s, and I'm wondering if that's a very kind. Should that be considered hate speech? Because I'm trying to think of what would happen if I got up and I chose an identifiable group and I said about them that they should be sent to Congo and shot. What would happen? So we have the video. Let's hear what he really said, because he's kind of said he was taken out of context. I haven't even heard the video. Let's watch.
We're having protests in front of like hospital bays where guys are coming in with their heart, like the old dad. It's been, for Christ's sake, get out of the way. But I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is that I'd like to put those people on a plane and fly them to the Congo. Like the DR Congo, and then they can get off. And like 14-year-olds who fire AK-47s at them.
Boo!
You know what it's like to live in a real terror.
So I've heard a couple things online that he was talking about the unvaccinated specifically. Could we? I found it really hard to hear that. Did you hear it any better, JT? Like in the beginning? Yeah. So, but basically, the freedom people. Well, the freedom protesters, and we have this. This inquiry that is going on right now into what happened with all of the truckers. And these people, it's about choice. That's it. Like not being forced to take something into your body that you don't want in your body. My body, my choice. And in seeing the evidence that is coming out daily and very hard to ignore unless you've got your head, underneath a rock, and you're refusing to listen to anything anymore. You just want to be hell-bent on your perspective. So it makes me wonder about Matt Good saying things like this. To me, that's hateful. I'm trying to think of a Christian, a preacher getting up and talking about any group, and saying that they should be taken to the Congo and shot. Wow. So yesterday, we had Dr. Mackes on, Dr. William Mackes, who is outing, was it yesterday? Yeah. Who is outing the data that he's had about all the doctors that have died. He gets it from the, yeah, oh, okay, you want to do the Toronto Star? So we had him on, and I did bring up the Toronto Star front cover, where most recently they put all of this stuff about the unvaccinated. If an unvaccinated person catches it from someone who's vaccinated, boo-hoo, too bad. I have no empathy left for the willfully unvaccinated. Let them die. I honestly don't care if they die from COVID, not even a little bit. Unvaccinated patients do not deserve ICU beds. At this point, who cares? Stick the unvaccinated in a tent outside and tend to them when the staff has time. This is the simmering divide over who isn't vaccinated. And this is the Star, a major, well-known paper, used to be, until we discovered that they are trash and print nothing but lies generally. But they're highlighting this hatred towards the unvaccinated and putting it like right out front. Again, trying to imagine anyone doing this. And then we were stunned by Dr. William Mack's comment yesterday about the treatment of doctors who do not want to be vaccinated and relating that to maybe some kind of psychiatric condition that needs medication. Fascinating. So I want to play you that clip. We've turned it into a tweet. It's, I don't know what it's up at now, close to 40,000 views since yesterday, not even 24 hours as of now. So this is what Dr. Mack has had to say about how the world is viewing the unvaccinated.
Alberta, the number one cause of death, and I think it's over 3,000 deaths in the past year, is unknown. That's the number one cause of death in Alberta. And who's investigating it? Nobody. The Alberta Health Services executives are ignoring it. In fact, I've been told that there has been a tremendous push to avoid autopsies altogether, so that doctors are instructed not to conduct autopsies.
Right.
The College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta is completely ignoring these vaccine injuries and deaths. Now we've just had the College of Physicians and Surgeons in Ontario tell their doctors that, if you have patients who don't want to take the COVID vaccine, you should consider putting them on psychiatric medication. And this is the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario basically saying that people who don't want to take the COVID shot or are unvaccinated completely, that there might be something mentally wrong, that they might need to be put on psychiatric medication. These are gross violations of medical ethics. This is just, we've lost medical ethics in Canada completely. I tell people now that we live in a post-medical ethics world in Canada. Our healthcare has become completely captured by big pharma and really politics. And because the Trudeau government is in power and is pushing the mRNA vaccines and their production, all the healthcare leaders in Canada have fallen in line with this push by the federal Liberal government.
Isn't that a stunning clip? And I mean, the entire interview was actually stunning. So before we get to our amazing guest, and I just want to let you all know that we're going to be going over to Rumble today. And so Rumble looks like this. It's rumble.com. Everyone who's not used to doing it, we're starting to, try to train you how to find us, if in case we're not on the regular platforms that you're used to watching us on. And there's some things that out of respect, we're just not going to be talking about on some of the platforms because they don't like it. So that's okay. You know how y'all have friends in life and they just don't want to talk about politics. So whenever you meet with them, you just go, the weather is just stunning lately, isn't it? And so that's what we do with those platforms. We just talk as little as possible about the real issues that we're all facing. And we're going to be respectful of that. And we hope that they respect our rights as well to kind of be on here and speak a little bit about what we believe in. So you go over to Rumble and look for Laura-Lynn Tyler Thompson. You see right there. Maybe I can make it a bit bigger, huh? Okay, and we also have the link to this show in the chat because we are going to be interviewing Dr. Mary Bowden today, and she is absolutely fantastic. She has been stand up and taken the heat like a true warrior and has initiated a lawsuit that we'll be talking about. And so we'll be going there in a moment. But before we go to our interview and before we let a couple of the platforms go, what I'd like to do is tie in this Matt Good comment about allowing people to, certain people, because of their views, should be taken to the Congo and shot. I find that reprehensible, that you are speaking to a group of people in Canada that love freedom, that should be united, not divided. And you are speaking to young people, and you are affecting and speaking into their lives and giving them ideas of how they should see others. And you're exemplifying how to speak violently and, in fact, to incite violence against an identifiable group of people. I find that shocking, because I know that if I sat here and did that, the platforms I'm on right now would shut me down. They would call it hate speech. So how are you doing that? How is the Toronto Star seeming to allow all of this? Well, it's going on in a lot of areas. And Tucker Carlson, in his monologue as he opened last night, kind of tied in what we're seeing, what William Mackis is seeing in the medical field. This assault on anyone who has a differing opinion, or dare I say, anyone who respects science and the query, the questioning that is demanded by good science. Why are those people being demonized? And this is a phenomenal perspective from Tucker Carlson. Let's have a look.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. In July of 1993, a radio station in Kigali, Rwanda, began openly attacking one of the country's main ethnic groups, the Tutsis. The radio station was called RTLM, but many remember it as simply Hutu Radio because its audience was primarily Hutu. According to Hutu Radio, Tutsi people were responsible for virtually every bad thing that ever happened in Rwanda. Tutsis had way too much money. They had way too much power. Tutsis were way too privileged. They were greedy. They were bigoted. They were racists. They were dangerous. Everything about Tutsiness was repulsive. For the most part, actual Tutsis in Rwanda ignored all of this. Hutu Radio was not aimed at them. But then, in July of 1994, just 9 months after RTLM went on the air, a genocide began in Rwanda. More than 500,000 Tutsis were murdered, in many cases by Hutus whose rage had been stoked to violence by RTLM's broadcasts. Entire Tutsi families were dragged from their homes and hacked to death with machetes. Hundreds of thousands of women were raped. The world watched in horror as it happened, but did nothing to intervene. Instead, our leaders told us at the time, the genocide in Rwanda would live forever as a lesson to the rest of us about the capacity for evil that lurks inside every human heart and the dangers of reducing our neighbors to the sum total of their ethnicity. They're individuals, not ethnic groups. Bill Clinton gave an eloquent speech, actually, on the subject in Kigali back in 1998. Look it up. And ask yourself, as you read it, if any Democratic Party official could today say those same words. It's hard to imagine, given what plays on a loop on that party's cable news arm, MSNBC. Have you watched MSNBC lately? Likely you haven't. Like the Tutsis, you're not the target audience, but you should tune in sometime. It's remarkable. Given that opposing racism is America's national religion, it may surprise you to learn that open race hate forms much of the substance of that channel's programming. And when we say race hate, we're not referring to the subtle coded variety. You want border security? You giving your kids piano lessons? You like Shakespeare? You believe in the SAT? You must be a racist. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the kind of race hate you cannot mistake for anything else, the kind where people just come out and announce, I hate this race of people, and here's why I do. It's hard to believe that anything like that is happening right now on American television, but it is, out in the open. And the most amazing and the most creepy part of all is that no one is saying anything about it. It's all but ignored. And honestly, we had no idea it was going on either until we started getting texts from people. Are you watching this? Can you believe this? So we tuned in. Apparently on the left, what you're about to see is considered completely normal, even good. And that should worry you deeply. You don't want to live in Rwanda. But on MSNBC, they're already there. Now, you probably knew about Joy Reid, the race lady, who's been fixated on race hate for years now. But MSNBC has a new host, someone called Tiffany Cross, who hosts a show called The Cross Connection. Here's a selection.
Many of us have seen the dangers when powerful white people decide they want something, they annex it. And they've never had a problem replacing the people who stand in their way.
We see American white people are going crazy. They're resorting to violence.
This is literally what conservative white folks do when they don't get their way. They turn violent.
White people deputizing themselves in some position of authority to have jurisdiction over their life when they need to mind their blanking business.
I don't think it's our responsibility to be tasked with destroying and dismantling the racial oppression that's against us. That's just saying we're more at fault than the white people who constructed this system and the white people who continue to practice institutional racism.
A majority of white people do not support policies that would unpack and unroll and reform this system of justice. This is what they want. Matt Gaetz is giving the white folks what they want.
White replacement can strangle culture. So yes, we should all be concerned about white replacement. It is, after all, a very threat to our survival here.
Is there anything worse than white people? They're violent, they're heartless, they're cruel, they're deranged, they're secretive, they're dishonest. In fact, as you just heard Tiffany Cross say, white people are a mortal danger to you and your loved ones. They threaten your life. Are they poisoning the wells? Are they baking bread with the blood of your children? If not, according to Tiffany Cross and MSNBC, they're fully capable of doing those things. They've certainly done worse.
Wow. So what I'd like to play tomorrow, and I want to get to our guests, so I'm not going to take time to do it today, but I want to play tomorrow the response from an African American hero. And that is the guest that Tucker Carlson has on next. And he basically sums it up by saying, this is actually a fight against God. It's not about all of these things. It's not just about pitting the vaccinated against the unvaccinated, the white people against the black people. It's not just about that. This is a war against humanity, trying to divide us and to turn each other against each other. And we can't fall for it. And the fact that Matthew Good, who I've interviewed actually many years ago, do you remember that? I did a great interview with him. He's a fascinating person. But for him to have come, I just lost all respect. And to me, he needs to apologize, because we cannot have that kind of divisive, angry, violent talk. Did you hear about how Tucker Carlson crystallized what happened in Rwanda? I grew up in Uganda. I was born a small white child in Uganda, East Africa. And my mother and father were missionary parents, and we had Idi Amin when we were there. And Idi Amin killed thousands of his own people. And they were just, the bodies were floating down the river because he's one maniacal, crazy person. Okay? Thank God he was removed and went into exile. And unfortunately died, probably being cared for well. But his judgment day shall surely come. Then there's Rwanda, and the Hutus and the Tutsis started fighting each other. Understand, these people lived beside each other for decades. And as Tucker said, the Tutsis, well, they didn't really listen to, it's kind of like us. We don't really listen to CNN. We don't really listen to mainstream media anymore. But when I tune in to mainstream media, guess who they're talking about? The unvaccinated. And in a very disturbing manner. This has got to be confronted, and we have to speak up and not be silent in the face of this kind of discrimination. Where's the anti-bullying people? What happened to that message that was all anti-bullying? And that's our prime minister. And yet our prime minister has been at the forefront of dividing us against the vaccinated, against the unvaccinated, saying that don't think that you can get on a train or a plane. His idea, we played just the other day, that we all still need to get vaccinated so we don't face the danger. He used that word, the danger of more mandates. What the heck? We can't afford this, everyone. I encourage you to love, to stand strong, to speak the truth in love, and to refuse to be mistreated. When you are in an abusive relationship with someone, you cannot allow them to abuse you. You may have to make take very strong actions in order to make sure that you do not remain vulnerable to an abusive situation. If Canada does not change from these ways, we've got a big problem. And I do believe actually we have a bigger problem than we know. So I would love now to transition to our amazing guest. And I'm so very, very grateful for this woman. Her name is Dr. Mary Bowden, and she has been involved in a lawsuit. She has been amazing stander. We're not going to let go of our platforms yet. Let's say hello to her first and see how you're doing. Thank you very much for waiting in the background, Dr. Bowden. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. You're really welcome. And it's a privilege and an honor. We have played the clips on our show of the stand that you've had to take. And I know that as we see the whole world not making a lot of sense, are you able to resonate with some of these things that we've just shown about, sort of the lack of common sense and the division that's happening?
Yeah, I loved what you said earlier, how everything was gray and now it's become very black and white. And I feel like I went through that exact same transition. I mean, early on, I was, just trying to be a doctor and take care of my patients. And I was testing patients. And so I was seeing a lot of COVID, and I was seeing the vaccine not working. And then I started seeing the side effects from the vaccine, and it all became very clear to me just because of having firsthand knowledge of it. But, early on, it was very gray. I almost got vaccinated. I ended up not, but it is interesting. And, prior to the pandemic, I was virtually apolitical. I mean, I barely voted in the last election, and now I'm considered a right-wing extremist, which I wear that with pride, but I never would have thought, never.
It is funny. This whole thing has actually it's divided us. It has made us. It's made the issues very clear, and sometimes we waded our way through it to the point, like you say, you were considering, what to do, and as a doctor and all of that. So at this point, I'm going to now ask everyone on YouTube. We have a fascinating discussion right ahead of us, but we're going to say goodbye to you on YouTube because we love you and we respect the platform and its rules. And we are asking you to head over right now to Rumble. And I don't know if you need to show it again or whatever, but head over to Rumble. You'll find us. And the description is also in the links. So thank you. And God bless. If you can't join us, we'll talk to you again.